Today we're honored to welcome Dave and Deighton to the show today. I'm very excited to have them on. We're going to talk about some very important topics. Like, there's so many different aspects of communication, right? But unfortunately, a lot of us were kind of losing that due to modern systems, modern factors, right? And being able to be skillful at this, being able to kind of communicate in a way to add value to people and just kind of like build connections. It's something that we're designed to do. But we're kind of like pulled away from that for so many reasons. But today we're getting to how to actually be skilled at this, how to actually take control of our social relationships and be on top of our game in a sense, right? It's what it's all about. And I'm very happy to have him on, share his insights with us. So how you doing today, David?
Yeah, they're doing well. Nice to be here, Anthony.
Absolutely. So very curious to hear your story and how you got into topics like conversations and kind of like being more sociable in a sense, like not being distracted by the systems and everything, like kind of pulls us away from that. So how did you get into that in specific?
Well, I'm a conceptual and experimental artist, and for decades, I all my work was kind of anonymous. I'd use different artist names and make my paintings. Actually, many of the people that knew my artwork didn't know the artist that was behind it. And then I started this project on on social media, and I wanted to see how people from different political views could communicate to one another with no confrontation. And boy, it seemed impossible online. There was a lot of virtual yelling behind the veil of those digital devices. And this project lasted 365 days. It was a nightmare for me, but I went through. I did the whole thing all the way to the end, and so glad when it finished, uh, because I was getting banned by the site for trying simply to reach out to people that were in different boxes, different echo chambers. You're supposed to. What I found out is I'm supposed to stay in my artist box, and I'll have my artist friends, but not to go reach out to firefighters, and then the next day over to teachers, and then the next day to plumbers or whatever. You're supposed to stay in your domain and not explore outside of it. So, and having done that, I thought, well, this is ridiculous. I'm going to have to go out there and talk to people in person. And what does that look like? Like, where do you even do that? And I want to do something on the same subject I was doing online, which I thought I'll do the more difficult one. It was political polarization and having people talk about politics. And so I was like, how do I do that in the everyday sphere? Should I go to the coffee shop and just start talking to people? That's not too bad, but it's a bit weird, no? At the shopping center, you can go, but you can't really do that when you go to a mall, right? And I have art installations and I use art. So I was like, okay, uh, oh, I saw these people over at the national parks that, they have their tables talking about conservation, or other ones that that talk about their church and how you should join their church, and there's free speech areas. And I thought, art is protected by the First Amendment in the U.S. I'm going to go in there. And so I applied. It's very quick, got my permits, and started setting up in national parks from Yellowstone, Grand Canyon, wherever. And I'd set up my an art installation, and I would start asking visitors three non-confrontational political questions. And I was like, okay, this is good. Okay, I'm going to try asking these questions. They're always the same questions that some friends in communication, professors in interdisciplinary communication, helped me devise. And because I wanted them to be non-confrontational questions, and I wanted to see where that took me. And I thought it was going to take me into some really in-depth conversations, but what I found was is that I was getting triggered by what other people were saying. Like, I wasn't listening. Right? I was asking questions, not really listening to what other people had to say. So then it dawned on me that the problem is that we're not listening to one another. We constantly have conversations in our minds, and we're not being present, and we're not listening to what's around us. We're just fully overtaken by the messaging that the muscle of our mind is creating. Um, so I thought, okay, I'm going to create a space where people will just answer the questions, and I will start to listen. And then I started researching what it was to listen, and then into what actively listening looked like, to use all your senses. And what are these senses, right? Not just hearing or seeing, but smelling, touch, and taste. And beyond that, what does that look like? So that's what happened. I went from going online to in person, face to face. In what I found was, I live out west, in New Mexico. Uh, what are the areas where people can congregate of different points of view and communicate with one another? And there are very few, because it's a car-based culture. Everybody's stuck in their cars, and they only go to places that agree to them. They go to church, they go to work, they go to their club, they go to the movies, they go buy a cup of coffee, they go to the grocery, and then there's set rules of engagement, and there's really not much room for substance. So that's hence using the national parks in these areas were one of the very rare places I found where I can communicate with a wide range of people. It's not complete, but it's quite varied politically, um, and be able to be there, explore what it is to be present, and offer a space for people to finally express what they had on their mind, and have just this random person listen to them. And it's been really weird, Anthony. I mean, I've had people uh, go on and on. Other ones act, of course, with suspicion, like, who's this guy asking me questions? And other ones eventually crying because of nobody's ever asked them these questions. What I've noticed after 6 years is people have been getting uh, this overload of information online, and opinions and la la la, and you only put like likes and hearts and maybe a comment that nobody really cares about, but nobody's been there for a second just to listen, be there with the presence. And that was transformative for me, especially as in what regards to being triggered and letting that go so I can just be there for the other person, and to find eventually that we are all connected in some way, regardless of what these opinions might be. And yeah, that's been a fabulous journey.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds like you got into it and essentially like you were kind of like shocked in a sense to see how much division there is, especially on like social media, right?
Mm. Yeah, the division is huge on social media. It was ridiculous, right? People, they'll say really mean things, and it's derisive, it's divisive, it's and it's missing, right? What I found is that we spend so much time online that it doesn't balance out with the time we spend in person with others, uh, for the most part. And if we have that precious time with another person, why don't we make that onto something beyond how's the weather, or how you doing? You know, what's your favorite film, or what series are you watching? Right? That doesn't have to be this. Those are connections that we can make. But let's go deeper, and hence that's why I wanted to use the taboo subject of politics, because that's the one we're not supposed to talk about. So it's like, well, if I can do that, if we can do that together, then we can do anything. Um, so, it could be religion, whatever, spirituality, whatever you want. Those things could all be addressed if the question is right, and it is true to your heart, and if it includes also what I found, curiosity, of course. Like, you're truly curious to what the other person has to say, versus waiting for your turn to say your point. Um, because in the end, I'm not able to, well, I'm not trying to convince anyone of my own political views when I'm doing this. Uh, However, I guess I'm trying to convince people that they could have these conversations with people that they've broken up with, and start the conversation over, and how that can be done, um, in a non-confrontational way, to be present. And that's about all about listening. It's super simple. It's super simple to say. It's hard to do without practice. It's like a daily practice of presence and mindfulness, of being, trying to be present for the other person, um, and that's where it is. And of course, in a national park, it makes it easier because the environment allows, um, fewer distractions, if you like. You're not in a rush to go anywhere. Like I've tried this on the streets of New York. That's a bad place to do it. Everybody's in a hurry to go somewhere, or they think you want something from them. Whereas in a park, things are different. You can approach someone, uh, and I got to admit, over time, and as I find things more and more divisive in the country, um, people are really sticking to their camps. Uh, this to be a really powerful political action that everybody can do, uh, outside of voting at any moment when the opportunity arises, is to reach out to just somebody that's sitting on a park bench, or in my case, people walking by between the parking lot to the viewpoint, um, and engage people, listen, and then find something you have in common. And that was another discovery for me, because at first I was thinking, oh, what am I looking for? I'm going to hear people, things that I have in common. Okay, it'll be things that I share politically, my political views. But that's just staying in my own echo chamber, like when I was online and staying in my artist group, if you want. Um, in person, you don't necessarily get canceled. You don't get canceled. You don't get shadow banned by the platform or by the algorithm. We have social norms that we have to, that we abide to, of compassion, of being there, of listening, of so I apply those. That's the human algorithm, if you want. And I try to find a commonality. Now, how do you do that with somebody that's just spewing out all this racism and stuff that's really triggering me? And how do I put that aside? And how I do it is, I found, it's like, I'm not going to get through these 50, 60, 70 interactions in one day, because they last like 4 minutes, sometimes up to 15. Uh, how do I do that without getting triggered all the time? And I found, like, okay, let I hear what the person's saying, but then there's an emotional word, like they're upset, they're angry, they're pissed off, whatever it is. And if that word right there is similar, if I agree with that one, like I'm pissed off as well, let's say, or if I'm angry as well, I'll let them know after our interaction that I disagreed with everything they said, except they said they were angry, and I'm angry too. For example, if they said, "Oh, those effing socialists are ruining the country," I'll tell them, "You know what? I'm one of those socialists, or I voted socialist in the past, uh, and I'm one of those people. However, you're angry and I'm angry, and that we have in common." And right there, that right there is my bridge, the bridge I've been looking for all the time after all these years. And it's just as simple as that. And there's this surprise often in their eyes, like, "Oh, you're the enemy, but you're also angry and you're real, and all this stuff's going on." And then, this thing's going on, like, "Well, you're different. You're not like them." Like, good. Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, I invite people to do the same with other people. Maybe they have an Uncle Bob that they don't talk to anymore over Thanksgiving because things are really upsetting. I like, talk politics with Uncle Bob. Listen to him. Find one commonality, one word, rather than a topic, or some focus on a specific political subject. An emotional word, and that's a bridge, so that we can bridge the human aspect of what we have. That's our commonality. And I find that's lacking all over the place, but we can do it. I mean, it seems just very natural, right? Anthony, it's like, does this resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right. This is what you do. I imagine also having all your different guests on as well. You're open to conversation and to new ideas because you're curious, right? And and to me, the curiosity is um, it's the child within us, right? That systems around us have kind of buried over and over, like to especially with the phone. I mean, it just gives us information. The curiosity is just a very small trigger to make you look a little bit longer, but it's not really answering any deeper questions um, about yourself, about others, about the world. It's just a point of distraction and entertainment. But when we do this in person, when we revive the curiosity within us, that this youthfulness comes back in, right? And there's a great sense of happiness as well when this person that you found abject and that was your enemy, if you want, that represented the enemy, and you're speaking to this person, and you're listening to them and giving them time, and you find one thing in common, and then they share some of that back to you. uh, you've created a link, and and that feels good because eventually you find that there's more than the anger, and that's contagious. That's what I like about it. Is that when that other person goes off and says, I'm going to do the same, I'm like, oh, that's a win. That's why I do it. I do this, and I do it as an art project, right? So uh how do you start a conversation? Like, you start a conversation because you have a podcast, right? So that you have your thing. That's your tool. That's your element, right? Uh, in in the like in a national park, I have to have a gimmick of sorts, a tool, and I use an abstract art installation, um, and I change it regularly. And the encounter becomes to me an art performance, um, not in the sense that I'm not being myself, uh, but there's some theatrics in a conversation, and so uh, I apply that. That's my thing, right? Um, and I've noticed also for other people, like, well, how am I going to do this with somebody else? And I don't have a podcast. I don't have an art installation. I'm not going to the national park. But then there's Uncle Bob at Thanksgiving dinner, right? And it's the story I found over time. It's the story that we create. Uh, like in this exchange, we have a story we're creating, and the listeners will hear our story. And that story they can take, and that becomes the tool for exchanging with strangers. My vision is that we just all talk to strangers and forget this, like, uh what do they say in America? Don't talk to strangers, right? They tell kids, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers. I mean, that's in there. Like, I don't know if they're gonna kidnap you, they're gonna hurt you, they're gonna do this, they're gonna do that, you're gonna bother them, whatever. I say forget that. Go talk to strangers, right? But do it in the right environment, right? They'll go walk up to somebody in their dark van at a traffic stop. Go, hey, hi. Maybe not that one.
Right.
Right? Have the kids like talk to other people. Be curious. Let them ask the questions that they want. Let those exchanges take place. And we maybe missed out on that as kids. And it's time to revive that. And I find that probably the most one of the strongest tools we have as society to bring us back together. But it's a very personal, painful experience, right? It's uncomfortable. Why would I do this? What's that person going to say? And nothing's going to happen when you just listen. When you listen, nothing's going to happen. If you can get to the point where the person's going to answer you, of course. So hence you need a reason to do so. So the story of us talking today, it could be one of the things that starts that conversation. You know, oh, what series have you been listening to? Oh, I was on Anthony's podcast and I listened to this, and you share that one because it has more. It might have more depth for you. It might relate more to you, uh, and talk about that, and the conversations grow from there. Um, And that's kind of my hope, and that's what I see people doing, and that's cool. But for me, it's very much is what it does for me, how it's changed me. Like the anger in my artwork is like mostly gone. Um, I see the impermanence of all things as well. I kind of remind myself, actually, before every performance, I remind myself that all is impermanent, that all is suffering. If I crave for something and I don't get it, I'm going to suffer. So therefore, be more present, and also the commonality of all things. And I remind myself of those things, kind of almost like a mantra, and it puts me in a space where I can be there or try to be there. I'm not saying I'm totally 100% there, but if it bee stings me, I'm gonna feel it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Do you do stuff like that, or what are some of the things that I mean that resonates with you? You got
Yeah,
to tell us
absolutely. I
about.
feel like presence is the key, right? You have to be able to kind of like experience things in a way that works for you in a sense, right? It's like being able to kind of be out in nature is one of the key things for me. Just being able
Mm,
to be as present as I possibly can, being connected to what is real, and kind of like being mindful in the moment. And that kind of be like a practice in a sense where we can carry over to everyday life, right? Because you're training your nervous system to be relaxed, and you're kind of like using your senses, right, to kind of like
mhm.
just be present, right, and be in the now, because essentially that's all you have, right? You don't necessarily have the things we're thinking about in the future or the past. Like it's all experience right here.
Yeah, tell me more about like nature. What does that look like for you? Where do you go?
Yeah. So you know, being in the health field, it's like sometimes I'm asked like, what is the number one practice? Like I do everything. Right? I do all the fancy biohacks, but number one thing is actually spending time in nature, right? Like earthing, getting fresh air, getting
Mm,
sunlight, right? I have like a forest I go into.
mm,
Also, just being out in your yard, just being outside, right?
mm,
Is very important. Like it's kind of one of those biological inputs in a sense. Like we require real food, sleep, exercise, but time in nature, that's something we require too. Essentially, we're kind of disconnected from it for the most part, and it's having a huge biological effect. Like being like in alignment with your rhythm is it's like kind of gets everything set up for you to be in coherence, right? So I feel like it's just very important to kind of like make sure you're doing that in a sense.
mhm. Yeah, it's important, that balance, right?
Yeah,
When
for
you were
sure.
saying that, I was thinking of like that illusion of being in cars, that we're all in cars all the time. That's when you open the windows and you put your hand out there and let it fly up and down as you're going down the highway, feeling that, right? Uh, Getting back in touch with the elements. Of course, there are elements when you're in a car, but then there's buttons, air conditioning,
Mhm.
auditory, put on the radio, right? The stimulation of the drive, rather than the other parts of it, right? Um, and we spend a lot of time in those devices. I mean, we're pushing around a machine that pushes several tons of metal around. It's kind of crazy. That's how we work in this like consumer capitalist system, right? We don't. A lot of us don't live in communities where we can walk to the supermarket and walk to work, and get a glimpse of somebody else's in the eye. I mean, I don't know if I'll look at people when I'm driving, and I'll give a wave to the person next to me at the stop sign. And some of them are like, this guy's weird. Why is he doing that? But then most of the people would just wave back and go, okay, yeah, sure. I know what you're talking about. We're saying hi to one another. I'm safe because I'm in my box. You're in your box. And, most of the time I get a smile back and a wave back. Uh, and, yeah, that's the part of the nature as well, right? Um, is the connection, the look, the notice. I see you.
Yeah.
Mm, I see you. Yeah, I got a rock out. I got several rocks outside my house. I got go up. I drive up the mountain, and on the side of the road, the rocks that tumble down. I'll pick up a big one and I'll bring it back and I have one on the outside when I leave my house. And what I'll do when I leave my house, I'll bow to this rock just to put myself back into that space, and I'll repeat myself what I was sharing earlier about impermanence, suffering, and connection. And when I start to hear, the wind or the movement through the trees, and no longer what's going on through my mind. Of course, I'm hearing it. That is part of my mind, but part of the experience. But I hear this constant flow. Then it's okay for me to go out and drive. I'm not taking like the full load of everything else that's happening before that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, building that bridge is key, right? As you mentioned, like, because we tend to have more commonalities than we're aware of, in a sense.
Mm. Yes, we have more commonalities than we're aware of. We can't really see them or notice them unless we engage with other people to find out what they are, and uh, and we don't hear what they are if we're not listening in to actually catch those words uh, when they're being said or expressed. Yeah. Uh, I mean, I've had these conversations with people that don't speak much English either, which I find always interesting. And 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 I find that the commonality at that point might not be an emotion or a word, but something that's expressed in the nonverbal behavior. So, um, we might be looking at the trees or at the view, and that happens a lot actually, where we just both look out in the distance together. We're no longer looking at each other in the eyes or reading each other's micro cues our faces. We're leaning into one another, and it's kind of weird to the other people that are around that are part of the group. It's like, whoa, my friend's like talking to this stranger, and they're really getting into it. And we get into this space because we've gone straight into a taboo subject, to something that, it's like a disruption, right? If you talk about a taboo like politics, you're not supposed to talk about that. So that creates a disruption, and that can eliminate all this other, what do you call it, like the rules of the game, right? That of conversation before you get to anything serious. You just go straight to it, and this disruption allows you to get into this space, and then we find that we're both looking out into the distance and we're really like communing together. Of course, we're in a national park, which helps and stuff, and there's like some sense of deep connection that's happening, um, and that's why I find that even artwork, like I bring sculpture or an installation of sorts, and people wonder what's that doing there, right? That's not supposed to be here, and that's a disruption. And that disruption allows you to get into a different place straight away, immediately, into the depth of things. More like in the Tao of water going down to the crevices, right? Into the depth of things. That space, right? The depth of conversation, the depth of emotion, the depth of the human experience, to get straight into there. There's so much meaning in there. Uh, those experiences like last a lifetime. They're the ones you remember. Like if you go on a hike through the forest, well, okay, great. But if you see an owl, you're going to remember that hike more than the one that doesn't have the owl. Or if there's a big storm, or there's a branch that's broken off and that almost hit you, right? You remember that one. There's a disruption, and the disruption is where, to me, where the meaning resides. Uh, the memory is formed, uh, and in the memory is of that human experience of what you felt at that time, that travels in time and in memory with you. And so I'm like, taboo of politics, go for it. That's a
Right.
disruption. Yeah, it's an interesting journey. I keep on discovering things all the time, and the conversations like what you're allowing me to be here and to talk about this with you, uh, and about well-being. I mean, as a guest, maybe on a different podcast, I'll do uh, things about politics or about economics or about business, uh, poetry, art. It all comes back down to that to me, right? Because they're not different subjects in a sense. They're themes, but the road is always similar, like this path, the flow, regardless if even if I'm talking about economic affairs with someone on a podcast. Um, the flow is the same. It's where you how you how you how you live it, right? How you live the experience, right? It's like being on that
Yeah,
forest road,
100%.
right? Yeah, the continuity, the presence, and all that. It takes you wherever you go. I just think disruption in my life is important, and I'm not talking traumatic experience here, right? We can create manageable disruptions, right, that are bearable for all people involved, and that allow to take us to a different space together. And there things appear to change, to evolve, where we grow as individuals ourselves, even in the act of non-action, where we're just listening, not interfering with the other, right? After the initial disruption, there's an element of change. Even when I'm talking to people that hardly speak any English, our presence, just the two together, and that lingered silence, that's powerful stuff.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
Mm,
The presence is very powerful. Like we kind of like always want to fill gaps, right? But it's like sometimes you gotta be in the silence too. It's like really important too.
yes, yeah, we're always there filling the gaps.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
because there's like there's so many different topics as you mentioned, but it's like how can we be present with all that and try to find the connection, right? It's like in your mind, why is it that you think we're so divided in a sense?
Mm. Well, I think the way I see it is, we're increasingly divided, um, because of all the elements of consumption that are around us, and the story of products. May it be just us as a product when we're the product for the algorithm. The It's not the disruption here; it's the distraction, right? When we're constantly distracted, constantly about things to buy, things to divert distract us so that we can spend our time looking at our screens, at the TV series, at the entertainment, are all moments that take us away from what we were talking about, of the moments of silence, of presence, of connection, of trying to reconnect in community, uh, because that's not where the money's at, right? Not much money in silence, not much money in introspection and mindfulness. The money's in the plastic toy.
Right.
And buy more and make it obsolete so it only lasts a few years and you got to buy another one and push around that big old multi-ton car with an industry that makes tires and sells oil, and taxpayers paying for free freeways, and a whole system based around subdivisions and suburbs. And it's the whole thing is made to, I don't know if it's purposefully. There's elements of economics that make it purposeful, but in the end we're increasingly divided because of the elements and environment we put ourselves in. And the connection I find is when we take that painful step to connect with someone else and to be maybe in a space that we're unfamiliar with. And that the power to get there is the curiosity and the expectation that might not be fulfilled, but the expectation that there would be some form of deeper connection in that encounter, in that discovery that happens through curiosity. Uh, and I'm going to argue it doesn't happen much with Chat GPT,
Exactly.
right? And you get curious on the subject. It could be a really good intellectual tool, right? Um, and help you to categorize things. Some things just don't need to be structured. Some things could be all intermeshed and at the same time very fluid. They don't need to be defined. They need to be felt. And which feelings are we talking about? The ones of our devices are ones of outrage, fear, uh, hate. They're like spikes, right? Like we have this, I guess, a love of pain. Whereas if it's one of calmness, of silence, of presence, once again, that doesn't sell tons, right? Um, but that might
Right.
be the biggest disruption that we can carry with us at any time.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, as you mentioned, like where there's so many different things, like consumerism, like all these things that are kind of like pulling us away from what is real in a sense. So they're
Mm-hmm.
like, hey,
Mm,
like the shiny object, right? But if you actually focus on
mm,
what matters to you and what's important, you can kind of like be much more connected, right? Because I find like the more connected with yourself you are in a sense, like your purpose and like all these things that are important to you, it's easier to connect with the world in a sense because you're actually fulfilled, right? You can actually kind of like know your values and your standards and all these things, and then it makes you easier. It makes it a lot easier to kind of like kind of connect, but also kind of like disagree in a sense, right? Because you have your own beliefs, but you also respect others, right? Even though they're different, you can kind of like be present and balanced within that in a sense.
right. And the word that caught me there is when you talked about disagreement or disagree, right? Finding the space to disagree, to be in that space. Um, so that brings me to another thought is when I've had hundreds and hundreds of these interactions in parks, right? And there's kind of a pattern um, when people are living more of a kind of a religious dogma, right? Um, and when they become triggered, I find it difficult for me to try to connect um, with them verbally. It's a very difficult time for us to find a commonality. I might tell them I'm an atheist, and that's not helping. That just triggered them big time, right? Um, but then I'm a deeply spiritual person. I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? And so it's just like one trigger after another. We're not going anywhere. Uh, but then I'll talk about prayer, and I'll ask them, you know, how would you feel about praying together? That's a disruption, but it's recognizable to them, and I might even ask them to lead the prayer. And so, first of all, they're willing to do the bridge, right? To take action and to pray with me, knowing that I'm the enemy, but that I'll be saved or whatever. I don't know. And I don't care much about that part. But I'm going to give it 100% when we're praying together. And I'm going to be in silence and meditating on breath, right? And they're going to be saying, if they have to say something, sometimes we'll hold hands, It's like, wow, I just met this person like 3 minutes ago, and we're holding hands. That's pretty cool, right? Not that I'm hoping to hold hands with other people, but that's a huge leap for both of us to do that, right? We're not in a culture where you don't start, you shake hands, but you don't hold hands for a long time with somebody that you just met. But if you create the environment for those things to happen, and you're willing to be vulnerable, and to, when I was talking about pain, to be in an area of discomfort, then areas of connection can happen. Is to we constantly challenge ourselves. That's uh, I think that's, I imagine, a big part also of your podcast as well, and the encounters that you have is finding new elements of challenge for people, and exploring what that space would be like. Um, and I guess what I do is, I use art and performance in order to create a space for these things to happen. But they're kind of narrow. They're because they're one on one. You have an audience. My audience is usually just that one person, or a few people that are around, that are witnesses to it. And they don't have full answers. It's usually just me and that other person. We have our own questions and answers, and that's being resolved. But it does, and I firmly believe this because I have so many examples of it, of how people take that away and act in their own manner from that experience to make that happen in their own lives with another person. And I do like that. I do like the fact that more people are doing this,
Right.
that I had my part to do in it, rather than stay behind my screen witnessing whatever that is, right? And people can go, if they want to see the full craziness of my mind over 365 days, except for the ones where I was getting shadow banned by the platform. I was on Instagram. They can go check it out. I did all three. It starts with Plato's allegory of the cave and the philosophy behind it, and all these different ways I tried to uh, talk about political polarization, and interact with people, and with video and art experiments and all this stuff. But it's just a really enclosed world. It was a chamber. It was an echo chamber. I created my own. I tried to explore its limits, and it got brought back always to kind of close to its original form. And um, sometimes I go back to it and I just kind of amazed, because the last post on 365 days I put the end. That was it. It just says the end. The last post you'll see on there, it says the end. But as you go back, you'll see all this stuff, and the anger as well that I felt. I think is expressed through there. The frustration I was feeling, um, because I was using trigger words that are not words you should use online, right? Talking about fascism or totalitarianism, or using the word Democrat, Republican with the same thing, and that right there, the post would sometimes just get blocked. So, um, it's a frustrating space to be in, and I think, to get back to what you were saying earlier, that's where uh, the division is in these spheres. But if you behave well on these platforms, you will be allowed to continue to live within that sphere. If you're a good boy, we'll let you keep doing your thing. If you don't do the things, if you don't do this our way, then we'll cut you off. Right? No more TV time for you.
Right.
There's a lot of Big Brother stuff going on in there. But in person, we're entirely free to do our thing. But if we don't do it with respect for the other, it's going to be counterproductive. It's going to be a horrible experience if there's no respect for the other.
Oh,
Mm,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, facilitating great conversations is really the key to change.
Yes, I like that. I like that. Yes. And there's so many ways to do it, of course. I was invited to with my wife to go to have dinner with all these people that didn't know each other. Although they were all artists, so it's kind of an echo chamber of sorts. But this lady has 12 people over every month, and they're people that don't know each other, so they can kind of get together. And she tailors it with questions that she's thought about during that time, and you're supposed to answer those questions. Now, I didn't particularly want to answer those questions, but I did, and that was part of the format. And we had our exchange. Um, Other groups like to put, what is it? They put six Democrats and six liberals and six conservatives together, and then and there's a mediator that's there, and then they have conversations together, like a group like Braver Angels does that. And good on them. All that stuff takes time. I find that just the little conversations that we have every day, right, that have depth and meaning in it, can be used on our own time whenever the occasion arises. And that's what I'm practicing. That's my practice, if you like. So when I see an opportunity, I'll take it. And not just in the U.S. I've practiced this in different countries as well. And I'll get straight to the depth of a subject, and a very open-ended question. Actually, I'll just share like one of the questions. It's like, how would you describe? And you don't have to answer this. It's just to share the question. Is how would you describe the political system of the United States of America? It's very open mind. It's very open. There's nothing specific to it. Very open question, and that can go in any direction whatsoever. And if you're just listening, yeah, the person's going to be able to say what they have to say, and then I ask them another question. I say, well, how about describe your feelings or reactions to the current state of U.S. politics? So they're going a little bit deeper and deeper into the question, right? And they're formulating it themselves as well in a non-confrontational environment. Somebody's listening to them. It's definitely not like online. And then I ask them always like to finish the sentence like a game, like politics. Could you finish the sentence like politics in the United States? And then it's blank, and then the person answers that, right? And these things are getting more and more precise in their formulation of what they want to tell me, not knowing anything about me at that point. And finally, and these are all questions where you can change the word politics for religion or something else in United States for Canada, India, whatever. And at the end, I ask them to give me one word, and this you can use for different ways as well. But you just ask somebody to give them one word that encapsulates everything that they said, right? All three questions in one word. And they're like, oh, it's the last question. It's going to be super easy. That one's super hard because you got to do one word. And I put these on a separate thing. I put on YouTube like hundreds of these interviews and conversations with people, and the title is always the one word that somebody said. It's like chasm, hope, whatever it is, division. That's a big one. I mean, just say that one word, and often it's like two words because they can't help themselves because they don't have one word to formulate everything into one. Um, but what I found is I've been using that also like at parties and stuff. When somebody's really getting into a subject, I'm like, oh, give me one. Like, if you're going to give one word to like summarize everything you're going to say, you just been talking about. What would that one word be? And they give you that word, and there's a mental exercise that takes place there, but it's not static. That's what I found super cool. Is that in the case of the national parks, people give me the one word, and they're like, okay, David, bye. They go off on their hike with their families or friends. And I might see them at the end of the day and they'll come back. I mean, it happens every day. There's a couple of people that do this. They'll come back and say, you know what? My word's not division anymore. I just wanted to let you know the word is hope. I'm like, wow, what happened? Is like, well, we were talking about the questions you asked us this morning, and we talked about it during our hike. So it was evolving through time, which is super cool. And they took this while as a subject of conversation as they were hiking along, and the word changes. I call them word titles, and they change over time. It's an ongoing thing, but it's a summary of it's. They're very powerful. These one words. I use those actually. Those words. I use them afterwards in other pieces of artwork. I use them in sculpture, in ceramics, and I use them as the inspiration for doing different pieces of artwork. And that's just me taking what they gave me and using it for something else, so that the conversation for me continues on through artwork. Their con- Theirs continues on in their own way in conversation with others, and that spirals. And people use it. It's just all different ways that we can talk to one another. But depth, I think, is the most important thing for me. You know, that's better. Look
Absolutely.
at that. Change the light. I just closed the curtain. It's like you can only see half of my face. I thought I closed it. Now you can get all the imperfections of my skin. Crazy, these devices.
All right, David. This was
Yeah.
awesome, man. I really appreciate you
Mm,
today for coming on the show, sharing your story with us, and how we can connect better, right? It's like through how we facilitate conversations can really create real change, right? Questions are very important, like being a curious individual, asking questions, like just being open to change, right? And the quality of our questions can kind of determine the quality of our lives in a sense, right? Just being able to kind of ask high quality questions and being able to kind of listen and be present in the moment can really kind of you know get certain results in our life that we otherwise would not get. Like build better connections and add value. That's what it's all about. So appreciate you, man, and it was an honor.
thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah. So if we can get connected with you when your work, where can we go for that?
Well, right now, you should go to my art project online. Just go to triptychdialogue.com. And that's a whole other show talking about what the triptych dialogue is. But it's a triptych is TRIPTYCH, dialogue, DIALOGUE.com. And put all that stuff together, triptychdialogue.com. You'll see this face right here. You'll see all this different stuff I've been doing. The three questions are in there. Communication uh, lessons, I suppose, things that I've learned over the time, that in my experience is shared on there, and different methods of expression on this art journey of mine. Triptych dialogue.
All right.
Good luck if you can write it down. It's a weird word.
Right. All right. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.